Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Tapestry of Connection. I'm Gena Frances, and today I have the honor of speaking with Sheri Brown. Sheri Brown is a dear friend of mine who I've known for a better part of 2 decades now. And I started off seeing her as a psychic and then as a Reiki practitioner, and then over time as a mentor and a friend. And so I'm just thrilled that I have her here on the show, and I'm just grateful to spend the time with you, Sheri. Hi, Sheri.
Hi, Gena. It's a pleasure, and I'm so excited to actually see you here. Gena herself is an incredible woman. She's had an amazing career in her life. She's got many accolades and awards to back that up. But when I met Gena, I saw the sweetest, most sincere soul and a very intuitive soul. And one thing I've seen over the years is a lot of people that do get readings are very intuitive themselves. I feel like sometimes it's kind of a confirmation thing. It's an honor to be able to give people clarity, but it's even better, I think, to teach people how to get that clarity for themselves and how to tap into this universal knowledge that we all have access to.
I think that's something important right out the gate that you're talking about. It's that we all have intuition. We all can access this property that exists inside of all of us. And that's one of the first things that you taught me is like, you're psychic too. And for the longest time, I didn't believe you. Remember, I'd be like, no, Sheri, I am not. And you kept saying, and you kept saying, and you just little by little taught me tips of how to ground myself, how to, start working with my third eye. And so when I started to think about doing this podcast, one of the things I thought is I want to get to know how people chose this field. You don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a psychic healer, right? It's a process. So with that said, what was the first memory you have, Sheri, of being psychic?
Well, one of the first memories that I can remember as being very psychic, I was 5 years old and I was in the hospital to get my tonsils out. And I was very weak, but the nurses in the hospital really didn't think I was. They were kind of ignoring it. And I had a whole vision of everything like a movie screen before it happened, of them calling the doctor as an emergency and me going into surgery. And I saw that, and the nurse came in, and everything happened exactly like that. But really, my whole life, from every memory, even elementary school, I remember sitting there and staring at the classroom board and it becoming a movie scene.
Oh, wow.
And it would be a whole vision of something that would happen. And I wouldn't know when it would happen. It didn't give me a timestamp or anything, but it would show me these images like a movie. And then, those things would happen.
So you knew from a very early age that you had this ability, but did you embrace it from an early age? I mean, it's much more open now, that people are much more open to this type of exploration. But when we were little, they must have.
It was not. And I grew up in the South, as y'all can tell by my accent. It's very authentic. And we're the Bible Belt, okay? So if you go down the street, you're going to see churches everywhere. People love Jesus. I love Jesus. But being a psychic and an intuitive person in traditional religion as we see it today is not widely accepted, right? And so you kind of do stand out. I tried to live, a good suburban life. I was married. I was getting my education. I had children in school. I was a coach, assisting with all that, room mom and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed it. But I still knew things. And I didn't really know how I knew them. I could just tell people what was going to happen. I had dreams about all my children before I was ever pregnant. So I met them first. And how I really started to develop that was actually went through a divorce, and I wanted to, heal. I wanted to, have a fresher perspective. And so I began to, take spiritual classes. I began to go to meditation. I did yoga, I did breath work. I did Reiki. I really saw myself more as a healer, really, than as a psychic. So I took healing classes first, because you really couldn't get the information. And people would say, oh, you're so good at this, you're gifted. But how do you really know? And in challenging myself, they were going to do a student psychic fair, but I had never done that. I was in real estate. I had a completely another business, and I was, happy with that. I wasn't unhappy. I've always had the inner voice. So I decided that I would give in to the inner voice and do the psychic fair. Anyway, I did do that, and I scored a 99, and they offered me a job. I had customers, I had clients that I still have to this day. And that was probably 20 years ago, if not longer than that. But at the same time, when I'm thinking back on it, I think just needing to step up and be there to help people was really what drove me, into this field even more full time. I'm always wanting to see what's underneath everything. Like, why is it this way? Why does it work? Why are we stuck in these, patterns all the time? And as a healer, that's really where my passion lies, because I can see how people grow and transform and really bloom when they're given the right ingredients. And the right ingredients is really a balanced life. And spirituality is part of a balanced life. I feel like a lot of people today feel kind of disconnected from their options when it comes to spirituality. They don't always feel accepted. And as a reader, I find that people want, that healing. They want that connection. They don't want to just know, what this person's going to say, but they really want to know how to live their life to the fullest and better. And when you have intuition, you can use that as a gift to help people. That has been a practice that has been from the beginning of time.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I do think people from a spiritual perspective are much more open today than they've ever been. Within your story, there's a thread that a lot of the psychic healers, mediums that I know and that are in our circle, there's usually like some big thing, or there's a trauma, or there's a change of life or something, and then they can't ignore the call to do this work anymore. And I find it fascinating looking back, because I've gone through all of those things. I can be that much more compassionate, that much more understanding, that much more giving, and it comes through in the psychic work. So why do you think it is that a good many of us, the line is not straight, right?
Let's talk about that, because remember, I love to research things. I love to see the why of things. Okay, so in the yoga traditions, right, if you're born with certain spiritual gifts, right, and you're just really born with them, you haven't really worked at it to develop it, you would have had that in a past life. Secondly, you'll find that a lot of people who have come from trauma, childhood traumas, because the brain has to develop that sense of acute intuition to stay safe. Okay, so that's another reason. We see near-death experiences as being another reason that can really be a catalyst for people opening up. I've had a couple of them that time in the hospital. And so I did leave my body. I did go to the other side. I did have a life review. But at 5 years old, I was so young that I don't know if that was really the catalyst, because I don't really have too many memories kind of like before that. But definitely stress, trauma, early will help you develop those skills. Everybody has intuition. Everyone does. Depending on how much you pay attention to it, how much time you're willing to kind of, look at yourself. Because the one thing about being a reader is you have to be able to take your ego, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I can't come into a reading and put my ego onto anything, because the minute I do that, I shut off that psychic channel, right? That I'm getting that information.
You're in your head. You're in your head, and you're not connecting to spirit once the ego
Correct.
takes over.
Once that ego takes over. And so I find that just being able to reflect on yourself and, keep yourself in the lines really helps your own intuition, right? So one of the things you'll find with a lot of healers is we're constantly working on ourselves, and you would think, oh God, you're not healed yet, and it's not even that. I mean, most of us are empaths. I'm in a room and I know who's been mad.
Yeah.
I know who's horny. I know who's cheating.
Yeah.
I know who's shady. Okay. And so when you're real intuitive, sometimes even just living in this world and maintaining your own energy can be a little challenging.
Yeah, that's a challenge that is consistent for me, is always remembering to ground myself, always remembering to clear my own energy, because being an empath, just naturally you suck up all the energy around you if you're not careful. If you're not careful and you're not shielding yourself. I think one of the first times I came to you, you were like, "Good Lord." And I remember you saying,
That sounds like me.
"How many people do you have on you?" And I remember thinking, "What are you talking about? How many people do I have on me?" And then I was like a baby in the psychic world, and you were like taking me step by step by step and sort of explaining. And, I think it's important to note that it is constant work and constant. I mean, it's fun work, good work, but like you said, it's constantly keeping developing so that, we're able to be that channel.
Well, exactly. And, I've taught so many psychic development classes, in my life and stuff like that. And I have seen so many people bloom just by practicing, just by doing some very basic exercises with themselves that they can do at home at any time or any place. One thing is looking at headlines, okay, with unsolved things, right? And ask your intuition, how is this going to be solved? And write it down. Eventually, most things are solved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be able to check and see your own intuition that way. There's so many different fun ways and practical ways to do that. But if you want to keep yourself in the higher vibration, what concerns me a lot of times and what I see is this new generation of spiritual bypassing, right? I guess that's the word I would want to use. And what concerns me about that is that if you don't have a foundation and a grounding in what you're doing in the spiritual world, things may not go according to your plan. Okay. There's great spirits and there's not so great spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of it. As somebody who's done many house clearings, a bad spirit in your house will drain you. Most of these hauntings are not just attached to the physical property, though they certainly can be. But when you are in a lower vibration energy, whether that's drugs or alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
any type of addiction, hate and anger, revenge. I mean, there's a ton of them out there that will lower your vibration. Now, you have a tendency to pick that up.
And I find also, like with our society, right? Our society is faster and faster and faster and more impatient. And so what I find is this is continued work of continued connection to spirit, continue to like work on yourself, as you said. And I find in today's society, we want the shortcut, right? Like everybody wants the shortcut. And the thing I would say from my experience, there's no shortcut with this. Like you've got to put in the time, you've got to put in the energy, just like if you were going to the gym. Like when people are asking me about, how do you do what you do and how do you get, well, if you wanted to be like a bodybuilder, you wouldn't just go into the gym one time and then poof, you have all these muscles and, you're right? It's like, it's work. It's that regard, it's proper nutrition. It's the different weight cycles that you do for that if you're becoming a bodybuilder. For us, it's continued meditation and prayer. I'm much more aware and praying more and doing all of the stuff more.
It can be your superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, when the whole world is lying to us every day and we don't really know what's going on, you can trust your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
that God-given gift that you can get up and know when you need to move. You can get up and know when somebody is, being deceptive to you or manipulative to you. You can see their true intentions. With that, does come some burdens. Let's not, sugarcoat it. I mean, you're going to be more sensitive, but at the same time, you grow and you yourself become more grounded, more real, more authentic, more present to people in your life, and more aware. And so your whole paradigm kind of shifts. And you may hear, people when they talk about the Bible, in this world, but not of this world. That's what comes to mind with that, because we are part of the world and we came to have a human experience. This has been the way of the world since the beginning of time. This is not new. But what's happened is we were taking people and telling them that people with intuition, were evil, and that listening to people with intuition would somehow, open them up to devilish spirits, and you can only go through the church, or you can only go through, a synagogue or a temple, whatever. But the reality of it is, God, spirit, whatever word we want to use, the divine, is always present. It's within us, it's outside of us, it's interwoven in every fiber and aspect of our being. They always had shamans, healers, seers, medicine people. Even in Jesus's time, right? There were seers and prophets. That hasn't stopped.
Especially in today's day and age, I feel like more of us are needed, right? Because there's so much negative and dark all throughout the world, and people are having less hope. And so I sort of feel like more people are waking up to the psychic world and to the intuitive world, because more people are needed to put love on this planet. Like, we need to put the love into the atmosphere, because that's the biggest thing that can make the change.
We do. We need people to hold a spiritual cornerstone in the communities. We need people who are tuned in. We need people who are authentic. We need people who have everybody's best interest at heart. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we have people who are not moral and scrupulous.
And I think that's the thing, when you see it represented on TV or read it in a book, how psychic people are represented is as if we're trying to rob people, as if we're trying to like pull one over on them, or we've got people under the table during the seance and things like that. I think it's hard sometimes for people to want to be in this line of work and develop this skill because of the stigma.
Yeah, I came out when there was stigma. Now, that was a challenge. That was definitely a challenge because, I agreed to do psychic fair, but a lot of psychics use fake names. Right? And so they were like, well, what name are you going to use? And I'm like a deer in the headlight. None. I don't know what I'm doing. I really hope that this is weird, but I'm going to try it anyway. Type of an energy. And I went for it. But again, it was nerve-wracking because I had clients. I was in real estate. I didn't know they're going to see this someplace and think I had lost my mind.
Right. That's the thing. People think, oh,
Yeah, and I had kids in school. I mean, what were their friends going to think that come over here and tell everybody? Who knew? But I decided people are going to think what they want to think. And I'm never going to be able to do anything about what people think. But I can do me well. And I just decided to go ahead and just go with it and use my name and be out here in the community, which is how Gena and I, got to know each other better and ended up becoming really good friends because I was out in the community teaching classes, doing meditation, and helping people grow in their spiritual practice. Because people don't all need the same thing. You see what I mean? We're not all the same people.
Like, some people are further along than others in their spiritual development. So every person's unique that comes to you.
Each person is unique, and each person needs something different out of their intuition. And so each person, will figure that out for themselves as far as what practices works for them. I encourage people to try many different practices, see what works for you. Go to many different teachers, okay? Because that's where you're going to see the really good ones when the not so good ones. That's when you're going to really find out what you're good at too. Because if you don't try different things out, you don't really know. Like one of the things that was weird for me during some of my psychic development time, I did practices with the taste, right? Like being able to get the taste for things. And I have found that to be one of the more fun skills.
Oh, wow.
Because I will be doing a reading and I'll be tasting, like the last one I did that did this about a week ago was buffalo wings. And I kept tasting buffalo wings. And I said, let me ask you this at the end. I said, does anybody really like buffalo wings or is going to eat buffalo wings? And she goes, yeah, as soon as I'm done with my reading. They're on the stove. But I could taste buffalo wings, right? And so that one was a fun one to learn about myself. And had I not tried different things, I would not have realized that one of my psychic abilities is the taste.
Well, let's talk about some of the fun stuff, right? We're talking about house clearings. Like, how does that come about when somebody, we've all seen like the Amityville Horror and all those kind of things, but it's usually not to that level. But still, people need you and they call you. And are there any that stand out to you that you can share?
Yeah, I would love to share a couple. The first one I ever did was somebody that actually came to psychic fair. So I was not really, advertising that, but they said, hey, can you come out here to this property? And that was my first one. And I mean, I just went and cleared it because I cleared my own house. I figured I'd give it a try. And I did connect with the spirit that was there at that house. And it was a gentleman that had owned the house before. And I spoke with him and I asked him to leave. And it was very successful. It was very good. They were very happy. They checked everything I said and it all checked out. And so I got a little confidence from that one because it was not evil. It was just washing his house. So that was okay. One of the ones that I went out to that was very, very interesting is it was a lady married and her husband was being choked in his sleep.
Oh, God.
He was waking, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he was waking up terrified. So she called me out because her husband couldn't sleep. So I go through the house, and I get down to the basement and I find the spirit that's, causing the disruption. And I'm like, you have to go and stuff like that. But he was like, I shouldn't go. The husband needs to go.
Oh, it's sweet. Ooh, no.
I was like, okay. I said, well, why does the husband need to go? Remember, I'm curious. I'm going to ask questions. So why does the husband need to go? And so he told me that the husband was drinking and that he was verbally abusive and stuff to the family. And that he felt like he needed to go. And I was like, well, this is an interesting development.
How do you broach that topic with the people?
I asked him who he was. And he said he was a male relative of the wife's and that he was like a father to her. And that he didn't like what he saw going on. So I went upstairs and I said, that I had spoke with the spirit downstairs and that he didn't think that he should go because he's related to her. And that he is a family member and that he's upset with the way that her husband's been treating the family. She was like a deer in the headlights. So she was raised by her uncle. And so it was a father figure, but it was her uncle. Yes, her husband had been drinking and been a jerk the week before. And so we didn't make him leave because this was somebody dear to her.
Right.
But we did go down and talk with him, and he agreed not to, do violence. And the husband was warned that should he want to do violence, that this uncle might come back and get him at night. So that one was really interesting. It wasn't one that I would have expected to have maybe the protective spirit, right?
Yeah.
Right. This one is trying to just protect the home.
How do spirits go back and forth? I mean, in mediumship, when we connect and they're there and, we get the...
They go like a thought.
So they can be in there because we don't want to scare, I don't want to scare people that no, they're, you go somewhere else, but then they're spirits that come back and like this spirit that wanted to protect his loved one. So how does that work? Are there some that just haven't gone to I mean, I don't even know where there is, but wherever we go, are there some people that don't want to go there? Like I think it's purgatory in Catholicism, but is there like
No, it's a two-way communication.
okay.
Okay. When you're on the other side, I went to the other side, and you're kind of like able to do anything that you like. You can move, but you can think, and you don't have to speak. People know what you're thinking, right? It's all telepathic. And so that dimension overlaps this dimension, right? So it's not like two separate elevators where you're going on different levels,
Yeah.
right? It's an energetic level. Just like you have cell phone waves that come into your cell phone, you may have all kinds of different signals from cameras, right? And they're all in this field, right? There's TV signals here, there's radio signals, and until I tune in, I can't pick them up, right? But it's overlapping into this experience. And so they're already overlapped. Literally, when you think about them, they know you're thinking about them. And they can come, and they can visit.
So house clearings stand out. What's been like one of the top experiences you've had as a psychic? I mean, like the confirmation, or like that was just wild, or that blew my mind. I mean, you see a lot of stuff. So it's got to be a high bar to be up there.
There's so many, it's almost hard to bring, just one to mind. Because you have some days as a psychic where I feel like that I'm like slightly ahead of everything that day that's ever going to happen. Okay. One example that kind of stands out. I live in Atlanta. And so, if anybody's been here, we have a lot of traffic.
Oh, a lot.
Okay. It's not always fun. But one day in particular, I was driving into my office, and I saw an image of a car crash, like right in front of me. And I'm like trying to put on the brakes, only to realize it hadn't happened. Right. And I thought, what was that? A vision? I was like, I need to calm down. But maybe 10 seconds after that, it happened.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that's what I mean by your whole day can be like that. I've done these readings where people will look at me like I have lost my mind, and I'll, and I'm like, well, I don't know, it's in your energy field, but I'll tell you what I get, and a couple of them that come to mind is, I had a client come in and, ask about her business, and I started telling her about her husband, that they were going to get a divorce and that he was going to go to counseling. And she was kind of upset when she left. Because she was like, none of this is making any sense. I don't understand what you're saying. But she came back a few months later, and everything that I had predicted had happened. I had one guy, and he asked me for a reading. And I said, well, you're going to get a divorce. You're going to meet some other lady. And eventually, you're going to be doing these tantra classes. Well,
He was like, what on earth, lady?
What are you talking about? I have this wife, I have this good home. He's like, I can't even imagine any of this happening. Everything I told him happened exactly as I told him that it would. And it stands out because it's not what people expect to hear. Right? And I find that the weirder the stuff is, the more it's going to happen.
I find that too. Like there's the things that'll just drop in, and it's like,
Yep.
comes out of nowhere, and that tends to be the thing.
Yeah.
I hold back from saying it because I thought I was still in the part of my mind thinking I'm crazy. I don't know, and as I've gone along and learned to trust, like just say it. It may sound insane, but just say it, and I'll say it, and then the person will be like, oh, blah 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 blah. It connects somehow. So it's a wild ride, I think, sometimes. So, Sheri, something I am extremely curious about is being a psychic and dating. So what is it like having that ability and navigating that kind of world?
Well, Gena, I'll tell you the truth. In the beginning, I was just, nervous about even telling people that I was a psychic. I was sure that I would just see tail lights, backing out of the driveway as fast as possible. And so I would just give them my other job, which was being a real estate agent or something like that. But I actually, as time went on, and I would get a lot of mixed reactions. People will look you up. I do use my real name, right? So they can look me up. So some people did look me up and they knew and they were curious, right? So I got that reaction. That was nice. Other people felt like that, they were nervous because they wouldn't get away with anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're psychic, then if I'm being dirty, you're going to know. Yeah, we're going to know. That was one reaction, that I would get. Other people occasionally would just kind of, use that as an opportunity to tell me, that I shouldn't be doing that I was doing, the work of the devil.
Oh gosh. Well,
Yes, I have about all three. But now I use my intuition as my superpower. And instead of swiping and doing all this nonsense, I go and find exactly what kind of person I'm looking for. And I use my psychic skills to read them, to read their faces before I ever meet them. Not only do I do that, and it's been very good. The other thing I do is I get their birth dates and I look at that and compare that. And so actually in the beginning, it was quite a circus, this dating. I mean, I am not going to lie. I had the whole gamut of weird stuff, like, well, if you're psychic, why are you divorced?
right.
Because most of us have had a lot of challenges in our life, which is how we develop our intuition. Like we're trying to, better ourselves and get out of that.
Well, and it's also true, isn't it, that like we need to learn our own lessons. So I feel like spirit doesn't necessarily show us everything on our path, because then what would be the point? So sometimes, even though we're psychic, there might be some information that's not shared with you about the person by your guides or spirit, because that's your lesson to learn. And so
Right. And they're supposed to be in your life, right? I mean, there's people you are supposed to meet, and we call those karmic relationships. But the reality is, what do we call psychic abilities but a gift, right? And a gift is what for somebody else? A gift is usually not for you, right? And if you're reading yourself, your ego is going to be in the way anyway, right? But it's different when I'm not reading a relationship with myself, if I'm just reading faces to see which one would be decent. The last one I'm still dating that I went through, I spent a month or two looking at different photos and reading their faces and watching what they were doing before. And I felt like that was the one I was supposed to go out with. And I thought, well, how is that going to happen? And so I asked, the divine, I said, if this is the person that I think it is, then you will have him reach out to me. And he did the next day.
Oh, wow.
And we are still dating. So if you hone your intuition, you take some classes, you can really tune in and find somebody that's really good for you. Or, you can do it the way I did for a while too. And it's a lot of fun that way because you just meet a lot of interesting people, but you do get a lot of different reactions. The one that's kind of the most awkward is when they find out you're intuitive and they want you to stop everything and give them a reading. That is so super awkward, weird. And there are, I mean, would you find out somebody was a doctor and tell them, oh, examine me right now?
Right. No. And that's the thing with what we do. It's like people feel completely okay with giving us every opinion about what we do, whether they believe in it, not believe in it. Or like you said, like sometimes I hesitate to tell people because you'll be at a party or something. And as soon as you say it, everybody's on you like, well, what about this? And sometimes that's an opportunity to share and, help them open their intuition. But especially in a relationship, you don't want that to be the focus. You want you to be the focus.
Correct. And you're wanting to get to know somebody and not just, that you have this one gift. If somebody is being dubious, if somebody is going to ask you to marry them, all those things, you will pick it up before it happens. Now, we are extremely hard to give a surprise party for. Okay. But I usually know what my gifts are going to be before I get them. So it's hard sometimes to surprise us. So that could be something that's a little bit difficult for dating. But one of the benefits, there's many benefits of dating an intuitive person or psychic. I usually know what you want for dinner. Um, I can tell if you've had a bad day before you get home, which is kind of nice. So there's actually tons of benefits for having your own psychic girlfriend, besides the fact that we're lots of fun and we're cute and we're sweet.
So let's talk about mediumship for a minute. What was it like for you on your journey to become a medium? Like, walk us through that process.
It was hard for me to identify myself as a psychic or a medium, even though I was doing it. I just thought of myself as a healer that can read. I didn't know. I was at psychic fair and they're like, "Oh, she's the medium." And I'm like, "What are they talking about?" Right? Because I just didn't ever see myself that way. I would tell them, where stuff was, or I'd meet them and say, "I see somebody around you that's got a hawk." And they did. They had a tattoo of a hawk. And so, you'll find that. But it's like being a medium is more than just talking to dead people, right? It's actually going through the different realm. We refer to mediums now as somebody who can talk to the dead, but most of the time your psychics do have mediumship abilities because it's using the same channels. Some people are afraid to talk to the dead. The living are afraid to talk to the deceased. It makes them feel uncomfortable. It makes them feel kind of like, what in the world? I'm talking to dead people. They have all kinds of feelings with it. But if they're intuitive and they're picking it up, they're also going to be a medium.
Yeah, that surprised me that I never thought I would do that work, and yet I can. And it's actually what I find. It's so healing for your sitter, for the person that you're working with, if they have unresolved things with people who passed on, or just to know that the person is okay on the other side. And you have to bring in the evidence and everything, so they know that you're talking to their loved one or someone that's passed on.
It is very healing because, we don't know as humans, right? We haven't died. What happens after we die? And, if we haven't had a chance to speak to our loved one or have closure, or especially if there was something off towards the end of their life where perhaps you weren't speaking, that is so painful. Right? That is so painful for people. And a lot of times there's questions around people's death. Are they missing? And that mediumship ability can get those answers, right? That these people desperately need. When they go to this next dimension, they're aware of us. Their soul is still alive. Their spirit is still here. Their body, it may be deceased and it's no longer active. And this was their suit for this lifetime. But believe me, their spirit is there. They are watching you. They know that you named their kid after them. They know that you're buying a new house. They know that your boyfriend's a brat, all of it. And your ancestors, as it were, can guide you. For most ancient civilizations, there was connection with ancestors on the spiritual realm. Think of the Day of the Dead that they do in Mexico, for example, or in Hardwar in India, they have a month where they go and they give offerings and connection to their ancestors that have passed on. Yeah, right? And so that's a way for them to connect with their ancestors even. And you would be surprised at how many of our ancestors are really around and they really do want what is, best for us. And so it's a beautiful gift to be able to give a message from somebody that was living, that's no longer with us, and that we know that they're still here, that there's going to be a day that we're going to be reunited.
And I find when I'm doing a reading for somebody and I'm doing a mediumship reading, like, it's really an honor, quite frankly, that they trust you to, something, because I believe that's something very intimate with someone that's passed away, that's so close to you. And the fact that, like, you get to know the person that's passed on's personality. Like they come in with their
They
personality,
do.
come in with, and it's like, I'm like a little kid in a candy store still because I, haven't been doing this as long. But it's amazing to me, one, how the person at the end of the reading, what they got out of it. And then also it has a way of deepening my faith because, how do you explain that? You can't explain it. I mean, there is another side. There is another side.
There is another side, absolutely. And Gena, came over one time and we did a seance here to practice our mediumship skills. And it was so amazing when you get a couple of mediums together and we hold that space, for the deceased to come in and talk to the living. We had all kinds of things happen. We had the elevators acting crazy. We had our family members come through. We had a spirit box and other activity to record. And it was going off telling the dog to get on the couch. It was hilarious. But we connected with our loved ones. And, we held that space as a group. But, again, if you get into a group of people, you're going to see even more going on than even when you're by yourself.
The vibration is intensified. So, the energy carries you up, makes the channel a little bit clearer.
And remember, your father came through and he kept showing a picture of himself in a car. And I was describing it, and it was a picture of your parents, but it was also their anniversary.
Yes. And that's been something, to be able to tell my mom and, because she obviously misses him so much. I mean, I do, but just those little nuggets, those little nuggets of joy that you're able, it's bittersweet for sure. But by the same token, it lets us know, oh, there's something to look forward to in our next part of our journey on the other side of that veil. So what if someone is developing their psychic ability? What would you suggest that they do? What are some few little tips you would give to somebody just starting on this journey?
Well, the first thing I will tell them to do is to get a meditation practice that works for them. A meditation can be physical exercise. It can be breath work. It can be, sound, listening to sound on your earphones. It can also be guided meditations. It can be mantras. But find something that you enjoy doing for at least 15 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, and make that a habit. Okay, because you have to have your own mind clear to receive messages. So that's going to be the very first thing. And honestly, we could all use a meditation routine. The second thing is to keep a journal. Keep a journal of what you get from your dreams, as much as you can remember, and little snippets that you pick up. If you think about your cousin Carolyn and she crosses your mind, write it down. You might find out she's getting a divorce. You see what I mean? You may not know why you're picking it up, but also note when you know, or ask yourself when the phone rings, who's calling, right? And see if you know before you go look.
And make it fun, right? Like
Make it fun.
the games with yourself so that there's not so much attachment to it. You're having and playing just like you were when you were a kid.
Exactly. In practice, find a friend to practice with, if you've got somebody that you can do that with. Because you can ask each other questions, and that they're practicing. So there's no pressure there, right? I had some good friends that I did a lot of these practices with through the years, and we would go into remote viewing and go and view a friend's house. So we would pick somebody we knew, one of us knew, and we would visualize, and because we actually went there, we would travel over there and see what they were doing. And then we would come back. We would meditate at the same time. And we would write down what we saw, and then we would message our friend, ask them what they were doing. And it would always be right. I would certainly suggest, getting books or going to classes and go to many different teachers, many different classes. People teach in different ways. People have different skills. There's a ton of stuff where you can test your psychic abilities. Hold an object and see what you pick up with it. Write it down. Find out what the owner says about it.
And like I said, it's just like building a muscle. It's your spiritual muscle that you're building. So the time you put in, you know, is going to come back in the rewards. If you put the time in, you'll see the development, I believe. So,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, you know, I think the secret ingredient is to have fun. You are always going to be your own worst psychic.
I mean, you're like in the beginning when you're practicing, you know, you might not be batting 1,000, but
Right.
the more you do, sometimes even when you get it wrong, like I learned, you know, when I was doing the mediumship, when I was studying, that if I said something out loud, then I could tune it better to know whether or not that was true. So like, you know, if I got something and I said it, then I would say, oh, wait, maybe not quite that. And then, you know, be able to adjust it. But if I didn't say it out loud and I didn't trust spirit where they were guiding me, I wouldn't have grown and opened up more. If that makes sense.
That's correct. That is correct. You know, but the simple ways, again, is keeping your mind clear, keeping your vibration high, you know, exercise, eat right, go to sleep, the basic things, you know, that we need for a balanced life. I find that exercise is actually very good, and should have a regular routine with that. And you would think, why does that have anything to do with your psychic ability? Because it grounds you. Anything that puts you in the physical body grounds you back to earth, right? And you've got to have that balance in order to be logical with what you're getting.
And if you're an empath, salt baths are wonderful.
They are.
To cleanse your energy. So for all the empaths out there, you know, get yourself, you know, some salt and bathtub. You can clear the day away, and get some relaxation at the same time.
Yeah, and meditation, you know, like clearing your energy, your aura, you know, that in itself will change your life, right? When you just learn to clear energy or shift energy. I mean, I know we talk a lot about psychic abilities, but one of the things I like, and when I teach my classes, is I call energy kung fu, right? There's a physical way to solve a problem, there's a mental way to solve a problem, and there's a spiritual way to solve a problem. And you want to find which way is going to be the best for you. Right? Sometimes people are stubborn, you can't reach them, but you can reach them on the astral level. You can reach them in the psychic plane, and you can shift things. So definitely getting into your energy body, your energy field, other people's energy field, and learning about how to navigate that. Because you can read the aura, this, you know, I mean, we're reading the aura, we're getting downloads, we're seeing images. But as a healer, without anything at all, I can just touch the body and go up and down the body and tell you what's going on.
Yeah. And, you know, I was going to say, a lot of times when people, like you have very clear visions and stuff that you've got, a lot of times some people, like clairvoyance might be the last one to come through for people, and not to be discouraged, because it takes time sometimes to clear the third eye or be able to tune the channel.
Well, we have different strengths, right? Usually, for me, I present first with feeling from people, right? So when a spirit comes through, most of the time, I feel them. I feel what they were going through. I feel how they feel. And then they show me images of who they were. And for me, it will come through kind of like a snapshot, you know, in my mind really quick, or, you know, like a GIF almost, like a real quick little clip of something. And I see that.
Sometimes I get like where it's almost like they part a curtain, you know, like a little curtain in your mind pulls aside, and there are images that come through.
Yes.
But
and then you can hear them talking. Yeah, the spirits, you know, so there's clear audience.
That was one of the wildest times that I heard, you know, I was watching a football game of all things. I wasn't trying to do anything, and, you know, and I went into the kitchen and I heard, your team will win by a touchdown. And I was like, what? You know, I didn't know that. And then I was watching, and, you know, they were losing, and I'm like, so I was wrong. That wasn't spirit. That was, and that's what I always do. That wasn't, you know. And then they went to overtime and they won by a touchdown.
There you go.
So,
and that's how it works.
Yeah. And I think
right?
learning to say, okay, and also say thank you, like, thank you, Spirit, for sharing that with me. Like being
Yeah.
grateful, an attitude of gratitude is also very
And
important.
we're the most fun to go to sports events too, because usually we pick up who's going to win. Just like you
Mhm.
say, we get the downloads.
Yeah. I have people say, don't tell me, don't tell me. I'm like, well, I don't always know, but tune in sometimes. Like for me, when I'm watching a sporting event, I don't know how it is for you, but like if, say they've got the little bar up with the teams' names, usually one of them will be brighter. And I know
Yes.
that by the one that's brighter, or one will be larger, there'll be something. And, and then I'll be like, but I keep it to myself most of the time because you don't want to fool everybody else. But it also lets me know whether I should be invested in the game or not.
Right, exactly. No, but we do. You pick it up just like what you said, and you can, hear the spirits talking. And sometimes they do. You're so tuned into that part of your gift that they just talk and talk and talk, and you're like, "Hi, we all hush."
Yeah, and I think also sometimes when you're not, don't try so hard, right? Sometimes people are trying so hard to connect that they actually can block the
That's
channel.
true. That's
If
true.
you
But
let
that's the
go
ego,
and relax and just surrender, you know?
right? But that's the ego trying to force something, though.
Yeah.
See what I mean? If you come into it with your curiosity, I describe it like this: grasping psychic ability is like moving smoke.
Hmm.
If you move swiftly and fast, the smoke goes away.
Hmm.
If you're very gentle and you coax the smoke very slowly towards you, you can move it, right? But you can't move it fast. And so grabbing that intuition is like moving smoke.
And what do you say about, people say, okay, well, if you already know what's going to happen, then why do people don't have free will, or they don't have, it's already predetermined. Like, what are your thoughts on that, and how to tell people? Like I always tell people when I'm doing a reading, this is just a snapshot in time, how the energy is right now. Things can change depending on choices you make.
Correct. So here's the thing: we all have a life path that we've come here to experience, right? And, you can find that out through different methods. When you get here, it's like being on the interstate. We know that you're going from Florida to Massachusetts, but which exit you stop at and eat at is your choice. Which restaurant, which hotel, which sightseeing that you do. So you have so much choice. Which route you take. Are you going to go the back roads or the freeway? And so those are the choices, that you're presented. So you do have free will. You have free will on what you're going to do on that journey and how you take that journey and what attitude you have on that journey. But now you're getting into vibration and like quantum entanglement where what you think you create, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're on this path, but what I think about, if I'm thinking about washing my car, I'm creating that, right? Now I stop
Mm-hmm.
and wash my car on the journey. And so raising your vibration is going to take you up a level, right? You're going to level up. So if I'm on the course to go to Massachusetts from Florida, and right now I'm messing my life up, so I'm on the Greyhound course, right? I can change my vibration and I can be going first class on an airplane,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just where I'm going. And so the choices I make, the vibration and the energy that I bring is what's going to determine which mode of transportation I make this journey on. And so we have a lot of control, but yet we have certain objectives that we are going to meet spiritually. And some of it, enlightenment, part of a path to that is suffering, right? Because nothing will change you faster than suffering.
Well, and I also think we sign up for certain
Yes, that's
lessons. It's
absolutely
not all roses, and
not
sometimes we want to experience. Our soul comes in and wants to experience pain or heartache or different things, and it's because the soul is always, in my opinion, the soul is always developing. The soul never dies. The soul keeps
correct.
going. But the lessons you've set up to learn, you're going to learn one way or the other, or you're going to learn them in the next
Or
lifetime.
you'll just come back and do it
Yeah.
again. And then we do have past lives with people. So a lot of times the people we meet in this life, we've already met before in another life. And so that's a fun subject too. I love all that.
If somebody wants to find you, Sheri, and I would highly recommend everyone that is listening, Sheri is a phenomenal, phenomenal person to have on your side, to read for you, to help give you clarity on situations. And her Reiki, I still remember walking away from your first Reiki session being blown away, like just holy cow, this
Isn't
is
it amazing?
got a lot of energy. Like, okay, so for those of you that want to get in touch with Sheri, how do they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through my website at clarityinsightwellness.com. It's available 24 hours a day to make appointments. You can also email if you have questions, and I will get back with you. I have sessions as low as 20 minutes and up to an hour. I have office appointments on Saturdays. And over the next couple of months, we're going to be opening up the Whitestone Sanctuary, which is going to be a spiritual place where we will be teaching classes back again for mediumship, psychic development, energy healing, breath work, meditation, and many more. And so we do hope if you're in the Atlanta area or virtually that you will join us as we start this new teaching and learning experience for everybody.
It's phenomenal. So I want to thank you, Sheri, for joining me and always being such a wonderful support friend, a light, bright light in my life and in so many other people's lives. And you have taught me so much. And so I'm just so grateful that.
Oh, thank you, Gena.
Well, of course.
I feel the same way about you. You know, you're a phenomenal woman. You're an amazing psychic. And you're definitely a great healer. And you're so adorable because you're like this little kid riding the bike for the first time. You're like, look, I can do it.
I know.
I'm like,
Sheri, I did this. That's good.
I'm like, you can do it. I knew you could. You know, but I love it when people really open that side of themselves up. For me, you know, it has transformed my life, and I can't even, you know, in an hour even explain, you know, where I was at in comparison to where I was. And so I'm living proof that anybody can change their life for the better with intuition, and they can build meaningful life, meaningful relationships, and have balance and, you know, more happiness than they've ever had. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have bad days, because we all do, but you will still turn those into a good day, right, with your attitude.
Well, thank you so much, Sheri.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us. And if you can, drop a like, follow, or share this podcast. If you need to get in touch with me, you can do so at spirituallightwisdom.com. Remember, we're all connected, and these are just some of the stories that weave us together. For the Tapestry of Connection, I'm Gena Frances. Until next time.